So you probably already read through this problem. The basic idea is that they've given you a confidence interval. They want you to work back using the information and figure out what level of confidence it represents. So a confidence interval for a mean, for a sample mean, the formula looks like this. In this case, we're using t instead of z. We usually put a star just to remember that it's a t value. It's a two-side t value for a confidence interval. And then it's times the standard deviation over the square root of the sample size. Okay, but they've already gone through that formula though, and they came up with this: 173.8 milligrams, 196.2 milligrams. Look, this part of a confidence interval is the margin of error, right? We can find the margin of error between these two, the lower and the upper bound. Here's the lower bound, here's the upper bound. Directly between them should be the sample mean, okay? So if we average the lower and the upper bound, if we add them together and then divide by 2, that means they've got a sample mean of 185. But I'm actually more focused on figuring out what the margin of error is. The margin of error is just the distance from the sample mean to one of those endpoints. Doesn't matter which one. You could have used the upper endpoint instead of the lower endpoint, like I'm doing here, because it should be the same distance. So if I subtract those, it's 11.2. The margin of error is 11.2. That means this part is supposed to equal 11.2. T star times s over the square root of n is supposed to equal 11.2. Oh, actually, look, they already said the mean. I didn't even have to do all that to find the mean there. Okay, so the standard deviation, I'm going to plug in 17.6 here. It's a bad 7. And then what was the sample size? 12 chicken eggs. So square root of 12 goes down here. Now I just have an equation to solve for t. Okay, and that is, we can use that and go into StatDisk and figure out what that corresponds to. So in my calculator, I'm actually going to plug in the square root of 12 first, because then I can copy the value. So there's the square root of 12. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. And I'm going to do 17.6 divided by the square root of 12. So this fraction is roughly 5.08068. So to get t star by itself, I just need to divide both sides by 5.0808, 068. So I'm going to do that in my calculator. 11.2, divide by that decimal number. We get a t star of 2.204. So that's going to help us figure out the level of confidence here. Now we just need to go to StatDisk analysis. We're looking at a probability distribution. It's the t distribution. Okay, because we're talking about t. Degrees of freedom. So for this test, for just a one sample mean test, the degrees of freedom would be n minus 1. Okay, where the n is the sample size. There are 12 chicken eggs, so 12 minus 1 makes 11 for the degrees of freedom. Okay, and then our t value is 2.204, and if we hit evaluate, that gives us 0.04, and oh, they say two-tailed right here. It's about 0.05. That means that's the area in the tails here. Okay. When they say two-tailed, they mean it's about 0.0497, and it's slightly off from just a perfect 0.05 because we did some rounding there. So the area of the tails is 0.0497. That means it's a 95% confidence interval. Because if there's 5% in the tails, then there's 95% in the center. Okay, there's a lot of parts to that problem, so message me if you get lost in any of them, and I'll be happy to help.